Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Henning of Vendux. Henning, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you, Gresh. Thank you for having me. Wonderful to be here.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And before we jumped into the show, I want to read a little bit more about Henning so you hear about all these awesome things that he's doing. And Henning is a creative, adaptable, and results-driven global executive with extensive domestic and international experience in sales, marketing, supply chain, and general management, both in a corporate and entrepreneurial setting. In his career, he has been a global nomad, spending the last 20 years building, transforming, and leading sales teams all around the world. This experience led him to start Vendux and become the chief evangelist for interim and fractional sales leadership, helping to grow sales for small to medium-sized enterprises. Henning, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am totally ready for the IMCO community.
Awesome. Well, let's do it. So to kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit here, a little bit more on how you got started. Could you take us through what I call your CEO story? And we'll let you get started with the business.
Absolutely. You already mentioned that I spend over 20 years leading, building, transforming sales teams. And that's my passion, my background. I didn't grow up to go into sales. I actually started in jobs like product management or supply chain. Then I did some e-business stuff when e-business became a thing in the late 90s. But building sales teams, it became my passion over the last 20 years. And I started with sales teams that were just myself, adding a first person to it and a second, and then eventually teams between 50 and 100 people around the world. And I fell in love with high quality sales leadership and the value it brings to business, because I also saw the flip side. Teams that were badly led, leaders that weren't really leaders, they were just managers. They were just administering something, they weren't leading a team. And so I decided last year that I wanted to start a business that provides this great sales leadership into every company, because there are a lot of folks like me out there, a little gray hair, a few years of experience, and ready to put this to work in an organization, not to administer, but to solve a problem that they're having. And that's the premise of Vendux. I have a roster of experienced sales executives, people who've led sales teams, average about 20 years of just sales leadership experience. And on the other side, then there are businesses, most of them small and medium size, who need help, who have a problem. And if the problem is sales leadership, then I can place someone on an interim or fractional basis into the organization.
Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate that. And I think so many times, as you kind of spoke to, I think you don't realize kind of that leadership aspect, especially related to sales and the sales team on that level, because I think so many times you think if you just hire somebody, you kind of plug them into a hole and they'll do everything they need to do and bring revenue, bring opportunities, solve all these problems for clients. But I imagine that is not how it happens at all.
Gresh, you're 100% on target here, because I've met so many entrepreneurs, people with a technology background who've built great companies and great products, but they don't understand the dynamics of sales and the dynamics of selling. All they know is I hire somebody with the title sales, and they'll do the selling, and I pay them commission only, or a large share of their compensation is commission, and they'll do the job, only to find that isn't everything. It takes a process. It takes a target customer definition. It takes the right collateral. It takes the right messaging. It takes the right pricing. Then it takes the right leadership, because salespeople are humans. Everyone needs guidance and needs somebody to turn to with questions, expecting answers. Everybody needs someone to look up to as a leader to take them to the next level. And that's often a missing piece. And that's why I feel so strongly about the value of leadership, especially in sales, because I always say that sales is underrated. How many companies have a CFO and a COO and maybe a CIO, but they don't have a chief sales officer or chief revenue officer? What they have is a VP of sales somewhere below the C-level organization. And guess who brings in the revenue? It's not the product. I mean, every single product doesn't sell itself because it's such a great product. It requires an active sales team to actually bring it to market.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that's a valid thing. And as you said, that is, I don't see that a lot. As you said, the chief sales officer or chief revenues officer, do you think that's just kind of like an awareness? Because I know there's so much kind of misinformation, I guess you can say, or maybe not accurate information is a better way to say it, around like the business and the aspects of a business. Do you think that maybe getting more awareness and knowledge to these leaders to understand how vital and important it is to have that leadership from a sales perspective would be so pivotal as far as increasing the likelihood of these organizations being successful?
I absolutely think there is the need for an educational element. And you already quoted that I call myself this chief evangelist. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a single person shouting out into the world. So my impact is probably very, very small. But I find myself over and over and over again in conversations where I am not selling my services or my business. I'm selling the concept and the value. I believe in this concept of strength in numbers. And Vendux is not the only business out there providing a matchmaking service for this function. There are a few others out there. And I aim to network with all of them because I think collectively we can have an impact. Certainly an impact in pushing the gig solution, the interim, fractional, contractual outsource solution for sales leadership. Maybe beyond that, even elevating the role of sales within an organization so that there's always a chief sales officer in the C-suite of every company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even being one person and shouting it out, it starts to create that movement and people start to create that awareness and understanding. And then it's not necessarily you have to knock over all the dominoes at the exact same time. You just have to knock over that one, and then it starts to propel all those things forward. So I appreciate you doing that for us today. So I know you touched a little bit on how you serve the clients you work with. Did you have anything more on like how exactly that fractional kind of process work, what exactly that looks like, and what you feel kind of sets you apart from those other organizations?
Yes. Let's start with the first part of the question. You know, what is fractional in this concept? A lot of CEOs are familiar with the concept of a fractional CFO, because if you run an organization of 10, 20, 50, even 100 people, you don't need a full-time CFO. You only need that skill set 2 days a week, or last week of the month, or it's very specific times during the year. So a lot of CEOs turn to fractional CFOs to bring them into the organization. They get great skills at lower cost than if they were hiring a full-time CFO. Now, the same thing applies to other functions, including the sales leader. and let's call him the VP of sales in an organization. If you have 5 salespeople, your VP of sales is very likely spending over 50% of his time calling directly on clients and being an individual contributor. You have this player-coach combination, and then there's always this conflict for the person: how much time and effort do I spend on being a coach and how much on a player? From a business owner, from a CEO perspective, that means that you're paying somebody a really big salary, a really big paycheck for just pounding the pavement and being a regular salesperson. You don't need that full time. And that's where fractional comes in. If you contract a fractional sales leader, you only pay for what you need, because the leadership aspect of sales may only be required 2 days a week. And what it does, it frees payroll or paycheck money up to be invested on into another person that pounds the pavement. And there are other benefits in a fractional concept. There's the immediate availability, because there is a roster of available executives. You don't have to go through a 6-month or 9-month executive recruiting process. Those people are highly qualified. They are at a point in their career where they've done and accomplished already at least once, often multiple times over, what you as a CEO with your new business are trying to accomplish. And will you be able, if you were to permanently recruit this a sales leader, would you be able to acquire this same talent into your organization? The answer is likely not. So you're getting high quality individuals who've been there, done that in your industry with your products. They come in on short notice, 1 to 2 weeks max is what it takes. You can hire them fractional and only pay for what you need. And that's the beauty of this concept. And CEOs, as I said at the beginning, have realized this for the fractional CFO, but not so much for the sales leader. As said earlier, we're not the only organization. So what sets us apart? It's that we focus solely on that one role, the sales leader or commercial leader. Most other organizations focus on all the different C-suites. And because the CFO or fractional CFO, interim CEO is more prevalent, guess where their focus is? It's not on the sales leader. And I and my business partner and the people we have as advisors in the background are all sales leadership practitioners. They all are or have worked in these roles before. We don't come with a background of HR or recruiting or consulting. We have worked those roles, and I believe in the matchmaking of bringing together the perfect match between an available executive and a company with a need. That plays to our favor.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely sounds like you're creating kind of like that culture and that empowerment of the people within the organization as well, too, by being able to be that leader within the organization and understand how you're able to do that. Because like you said, you don't have to necessarily be there all the time. You have the 2 days a week or however long is determined to be able to make that impact. And so that the people that are out pounding the streets, so to speak, are able to do that effectively and efficiently. So I absolutely love that. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit. And I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's probably in every CEO's life, there's more than one thing. Mm-hmm. And maybe mine is the one I'm going to talk about is driven culturally, because I grew up in Germany, and they tell us that Germans are so organized. So my most important tool is a calendar. To record every appointment, every conversation, every scheduled event that I have, whether it's business or personal, in one place is really important. To have reminders in there, to have my to-do list in the calendar of all the important things, to have birthdays or anniversaries of all the people that I work with and that I have worked with in there, so that I can send a quick note, text message, and congratulate them, allowing me to block time for myself. So on my calendar, every morning I have an hour for workout. I don't work out every morning, but I have the time set aside. And when I make my calendar public through places like Calendly, where people can book times, it just shows up as block time. And it is time that I then can reserve for myself. So with that in mind, that's my most important tool, because it structures my day. It allows me to not forget anything. It allows me to know when a meeting is supposed to be over, and make sure that the goals are accomplished within that time period. That's the thing that helps me go through the day, plan for the next day, because at any point in time I can see what's on the calendar for tomorrow or for next week, and it's continuously updated, coming together from different sources. That's my hack.
I love that hack, and it's so funny because when I have taken like sales training, they always say you want to make sure that you set the table, so to speak, and make sure that people know exactly what to expect, what not to expect. And I feel like the calendar is that exact same thing, where hey, from this time I have blocked out that I'm going to do the working out. I have this meeting at this time. This is how long it's going to last. As you mentioned, oh, it's so and so's birthday tomorrow, so you begin to kind of virtually set the table, so it allows us to focus on other things, so that we can really be present on what we're doing at that moment. So I love that hack. And now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. And this could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It could be around sales, or it might be something, if you were to hop into a time machine, you would tell your younger business self.
Well, I've tried that. So this venture with Vendux isn't my first. I've started another business before, and consistently, I find that everything you plan then ends up taking longer, right? You want to reach a certain milestone in revenue. It always takes longer what you originally planned. You launch a new product. The first sale will take longer than you originally planned. And there's probably nothing in the world that takes away the optimism that you have when you start something and set yourself a really ambitious goal. Taking a time machine back and telling my younger self to plan more time probably wouldn't work, because the optimism would override the knowledge. And if I started a 10th business, I would probably still be planning too little time for all of these things to develop.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost a balance beam that I'm sure a lot of people that are listening can understand as well too, where you have the optimism. And I think you kind of have to have a little bit of ego to be able to say, hey, I'm going to start this, I'm going to make this impact. But at the same time, have to say, okay, well, I know that from my past experience, everything is going to take probably twice as long and cost twice as much. So you have to remind yourself of that, but you're still so optimistic. So it's kind of like a balance beam. But I think the biggest thing is, as you kind of touched on, is that you have to keep going. And when you have that mentality, regardless of you not getting it exactly when you wanted to have it happen or hit that goal or accomplish that sales or whatever it might be, you still got to have to continue to keep going and move forward.
You mentioned cost twice as much. I actually think that controlling cost is easier, because you control what you spend your money on.
Mm-hmm.
But timing isn't all dependent on you. If I say, by the end of the day, I want to have a blog post out, it's all in my control. Yes, I can accomplish that, but launching a product, reaching a revenue milestone, or any of these things typically involve a lot of other people, most notably clients. And clients never do exactly what you expect them to do.
Exactly. There's always that human element that's always at play. And I appreciate you for mentioning that, because yeah, you're absolutely right. You have your credit card, so to speak, and you decide what to pay or not to pay, but you can't use your credit card to get the client to do what they're supposed to do all the time. So that's that variance that we always have to work through and kind of try to play it for as much as possible.
Right, right, absolutely.
Awesome. So now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So Henning, what does being a CEO mean to you?
I've listened to a few of your podcasts before, or recordings of interviews, and I was very pleasantly surprised about the diversity of answers that you get to that question. Um, to me, it's being a CEO means being an enabler. If I'm a solopreneur, I have a business and it's just me, then it's just me. If I have a team of people working with me in an organization, then my role as CEO is to enable them, to enable each one of them to do the jobs that they were hired to do to achieve or overachieve their goals. And as an enabler, I remove roadblocks, I provide answers in a quick, direct, responsive fashion so that they can move on. I provide the tools that they require, and do it, as the need arises. All of these things are steps to enable others to achieve their goals. And it's a common concept or common understanding of the concept that in an organization, if everyone achieves their goals or overachieves their goals, then the organization as a whole does. And so as a CEO, if everyone on my team meets or exceeds their goals, then I meet or exceed my goals.
Absolutely. I love that perspective. I think it might be Jim Rome. I can't remember who said it. If you help enough people get what they want, then you get what you want. And when you have that understanding and that perspective, and you're able to use and enable people, which I love that word, just because I think it comes up obviously in everything that you do from a fractional leadership standpoint. But I think if we change and switch our perspective to really understand the impact that we can have in so many different levels and so many different ways, it becomes a very powerful and empowering, obviously, title, but also word, because you start to affect the change and the impact that you want to see in businesses and organizations.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Henning, truly appreciate that definition, and I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they can get a hold of you and your team and find out about all the awesome things you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and to answer the last part, just go to vendux.org, vendux.org. All the contact details are on the website. Check it out and contact us if we can help you or your team in meeting or achieving sales goals. And Goresh, I appreciate you and the show that you're putting together. And I look forward to listening to a lot of other extremely interesting CEOs that you have as guests on your show.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that, Henning. We will have the links and information in the show notes as well, so that people can follow up with you. And I appreciate you for all you're doing as well, too, and leading the march. And I feel like there should be like campaign signs up. We need more CSOs in our organization. So I appreciate you leading that charge and getting that going, because it's definitely something that's needed. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much. You as well. Take care. Bye.